What if the monsters of myth were never just stories? Long before science had answers, humanity created creatures to explain fear, death, and the unknown. From fire-breathing dragons and blood-drinking vampires to beings born of hunger, darkness, and the depths of the sea, these legends shaped entire civilizations. In this video, we'll uncover 10 legendary creatures, exploring the myths behind them, the cultures that feared them, and the real truths that may have inspired their creation. Thank you for joining us on this journey into myth and mystery. If you enjoy deep storytelling and hidden history, you're in the right place. The dragon, fire made flesh. Long before maps were complete and the world was named, humanity feared what lay beyond the horizon. Mountains smoked. The earth shook. Fire erupted from the ground, devouring forests and villages alike. To early civilizations, these forces were not random, they were alive. And so, from fire, stone, and fear itself, the dragon was born. The dragon is not merely a monster. It is one of the most enduring symbols in human history, appearing independently across cultures separated by oceans and millennia. Wherever humans encountered overwhelming power they could not control, dragons followed. In Europe, dragons were destroyers. In Asia, they were divine. In both, they commanded awe. The first shape of fear. Imagine a world without science. No understanding of tectonic plates, no explanation for lightning splitting the sky or volcanoes vomiting molten rock. When the earth roared, something had to be responsible. Ancient people looked at fire and saw intention. The earliest dragon myths likely arose from humanity's relationship with natural disasters. Volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, wildfires, and storms were unpredictable and devastating. To give these events meaning, early societies personified them. Fire became breath. Lava became blood. Smoke became a warning. The dragon was not invented, it was recognized. Its serpentine form mirrored snakes, creatures already feared and respected. Snakes shed their skin, seeming immortal. They moved without limbs, silently, like living rivers of muscle. To scale them up into gods or monsters required little imagination. Dragons of the Western world, chaos and conquest. In medieval Europe, dragons were enemies of civilization. They lived at the edges of the known world, caves, mountains, ruins. They hoarded gold, kidnapped livestock, poisoned land, and demanded sacrifice. These dragons symbolized chaos. The Christian worldview shaped these myths heavily. Dragons became representations of sin, greed, and the devil himself. In the book of Revelation, Satan is described as a great dragon cast down from heaven. This association transformed dragons into moral obstacles rather than natural forces. The most famous of these legends is Saint George and the Dragon. In the story, a dragon terrorizes a town, demanding human sacrifices. When the king's daughter is chosen, George intervenes, slays the dragon, and converts the people to Christianity. This was not a zoological tale. It was propaganda. The dragon represented paganism, fear, and disorder. The knight represented faith, reason, and divine authority. Killing the dragon meant conquering the old world and imposing a new moral order. Fossils and fire, real-world inspirations. For centuries, farmers and miners across Europe uncovered enormous bones embedded in stone. Without knowledge of dinosaurs or prehistoric mammals, these remains could only belong to monsters. Ancient Greeks believed fossilized skulls of mammoths were the remains of cyclopes. Similarly, large reptilian fossils may have inspired dragon legends. A massive rib cage becomes a wing. A skull becomes a fire-breathing head. Volcanic regions added fuel to the myth. In places like Mount Etna or Vesuvius, the earth quite literally breathed fire. The ground trembled. Smoke rose. Lava flowed like molten veins. To those living nearby, a dragon beneath the mountain was not metaphor, it was explanation. Eastern dragons, power without evil. While Europe feared dragons, East Asia revered them. Chinese dragons were long, serpentine beings without wings, yet capable of flight. They ruled rivers, seas, and the sky itself. Rain, crucial to agriculture, was believed to be controlled by dragons. When drought struck, rituals were performed to appease them. The dragon became a symbol of balance and authority. Emperors claimed descent from dragons, using the image to legitimize their rule. Dragon robes were worn exclusively by royalty. Unlike Western dragons, these creatures were wise, ancient, and protective. This difference reveals a crucial truth: monsters reflect environment. In Europe, where storms and disasters were destructive and unpredictable, dragons became enemies. In China, where rainfall meant survival, the dragon was a guardian. The same creature, interpreted through different needs. The psychology of the dragon. On a deeper level, dragons represent humanity's struggle with power. They are hoarders of treasure, guarding gold they do not use. This reflects ancient fears of wealth inequality and greed. To defeat a dragon was to reclaim stolen prosperity. They breathe fire, the most transformative force known to early humans. Fire creates tools, cooks food, and forges metal, but also destroys indiscriminately. Dragons embody fire's dual nature. Psychologically, the dragon is the ultimate test. It lives alone. It is ancient. It cannot be reasoned with. To face it is to face fear itself. This is why dragon-slaying myths often mark a hero's transformation from ordinary to legendary. You do not defeat a dragon and remain unchanged. Women, gold, and sacrifice. Many dragon myths include an unsettling pattern: the demand for sacrifice, often a maiden. This reflects historical anxieties around survival. In desperate times, famine, disease, war, communities were forced to make impossible choices. Myth transformed these harsh realities into symbolic narratives. The dragon demanding sacrifice was fate made flesh. Slaying the dragon symbolized liberation from fear and helplessness. The rescued maiden represented the restoration of order, fertility, and future generations. These stories reinforce social values while offering hope that terror could be overcome. Dragons as guardians of thresholds. Dragons often guard something: treasure, sacred knowledge, or forbidden places. In mythology, guardians mark thresholds, points of transition between safety and danger, ignorance and wisdom. To pass a dragon is to earn access. In this sense, dragons are not purely evil. They are gatekeepers. They challenge those who seek power without preparation. Only the worthy survive the encounter. This idea appears across cultures, from Norse dragons like Fafnir, twisted by greed, to Japanese dragons guarding sacred waters. Why dragons never died? Unlike many mythical creatures, dragons never faded into obscurity. They evolved. In modern storytelling, dragons are complex. Some are villains. Others are allies. Some speak, reason, and even teach. This shift reflects humanity's changing relationship with power and nature. As science explained the world, dragons no longer needed to explain disasters. Instead, they became symbols of ancient wisdom, lost magic, and untamed freedom. Dragons now represent what humanity fears losing: mystery. In a mapped, measured world, dragons remind us that not everything should be controlled. Fire made flesh. The dragon is fire given form. It is the mountain that moves, the storm that thinks, the fear that watches back. It was born when humans first realized the world was stronger than they were, and it survives because, in many ways, it still is. The vampire, fear of death that walks. There are few monsters as intimate as the vampire. Dragons burn cities from afar. Krakens rise from distant depths. But the vampire comes quietly. It enters the home. It wears a familiar face. It feeds not on villages or ships, but on individuals, often those it once loved. Where the dragon represents nature's overwhelming power, the vampire represents something far more unsettling: the fear that death itself refuses to stay buried. The walking dead before the undead. Long before capes, castles, and seduction, vampires were grotesque. In Eastern Europe, particularly in regions that are now Serbia, Romania, and Hungary, vampire legends flourished between the 14th and 18th centuries. These were not elegant immortals. They were bloated corpses, ruddy with blood, crawling from graves to spread disease and misfortune. Villagers believed that the dead could rise if burial rituals were performed incorrectly, if a person died violently, or if they lived an immoral life. The line between life and death was thin and fragile. When cattle sickened, crops failed, or families died one after another, the cause was not bacteria or viruses. It was the dead. Someone was feeding. Plague, panic, and the undead explanation. Europe in the Middle Ages was shaped by death on a scale difficult to comprehend. The Black Death alone wiped out nearly half the population in some regions. Entire villages vanished. Bodies were buried quickly, often without ceremony. Graves were reopened to investigate suspected vampires. What villagers found confirmed their fears. Corpses appeared swollen. Blood seeped from mouths and noses. Fingernails and hair seemed to grow. The body had not decayed as expected. To modern science, these are normal signs of decomposition. Gases build up. Skin retracts. Blood pools. But to a terrified community, this was proof of the undead. The vampire was born not from imagination, but from misunderstanding. When people staked a corpse and blood flowed from the wound, they believed they had killed it again. In reality, they had pierced a gas-filled body. Fear completed the story. Rituals against the night. Anti-vampire rituals were precise and widespread. A suspected vampire might be staked through the heart, decapitated, burned, or buried face down so it would dig deeper into the earth rather than escape. Garlic was hung in homes. Seeds were scattered across graves, based on the belief that vampires were compelled to count them, delaying their return until sunrise. These rituals gave people control. In a world where death struck randomly, the vampire offered a target. A cause. Something that could be fought. And so fear became action. Disease wearing a face. Some scholars believe specific illnesses helped shape vampire mythology. Rabies, for example, causes aggression, sensitivity to light, aversion to water, and biting behavior. Porphyria, a rare blood disorder, can cause pale skin, gum recession, and photosensitivity. Tuberculosis caused victims to waste away slowly, pale and coughing blood, leading families to believe a vampire was draining them. In some cases, entire families fell ill one by one. Without germ theory, the explanation was obvious. One of them had returned. The vampire became a narrative for contagious death. Blood, immortality, and taboo. Blood has always held symbolic power. It represents life, lineage, and vitality. To drink blood is to steal life itself. This act violated some of humanity's deepest taboos. The vampire was not merely dangerous, it was obscene. Yet blood also symbolized renewal. Ancient cultures believed consuming blood transferred strength or youth. The vampire myth twisted this belief into horror. Immortality was possible, but only through corruption. The vampire asks a forbidden question: what would you sacrifice to never die? From corpse to count. The vampire we recognize today began to take shape in the 18th and 19th centuries, as folklore merged with literature. In 1819, John Polidori published The Vampire, transforming the creature into an aristocratic predator. This was no bloated corpse. This vampire was charming, educated, and deadly. Bram Stoker's Dracula cemented the image. Count Dracula was ancient, foreign, and seductive. He represented fears of invasion, sexuality, and moral decay in Victorian society. The monster had evolved to reflect new anxieties. Where medieval vampires symbolized disease, modern vampires symbolized temptation, sex, power, and the night. Victorian culture was outwardly restrained, but inwardly obsessed with repression. The vampire became a safe vessel for forbidden desire. The bite was intimate. The act was penetrative. The exchange of blood mirrored sexual union. Victims were weakened yet drawn to the vampire's presence. In these stories, the vampire was both predator and liberator. It broke rules. It crossed boundaries. It lived outside society's constraints. Fear and fascination became inseparable. The immortal outsider. Another enduring aspect of the vampire is isolation. To be immortal is to watch everyone you love die. To feed is to harm. To exist is to hide. Modern interpretations often portray vampires as tragic figures, cursed with endless life. This reflects contemporary anxieties about loneliness, identity, and meaning in a long life stripped of purpose. The vampire survives not because it is terrifying, but because it is relatable. It is the fear of outliving connection. The vampire across cultures. Vampire-like beings exist worldwide. In China, the Jiangsha was a hopping corpse that drained life energy. In India, Vetalas possessed bodies and haunted cremation grounds. In Africa, a Sasabonsum preyed on travelers. In the Americas, legends of blood-drinking spirits predate European contact. This universality suggests a shared human fear, the dead returning with hunger. Death is final, or it must be. The vampire challenges that certainty. Why the vampire endures. Unlike dragons, vampires adapt endlessly. They can be monsters, lovers, heroes, or villains. They appear in horror, romance, and philosophy. They ask questions rather than provide answers. Is immortality a gift or a curse? Is survival worth corruption? Where does humanity end? The vampire persists because death remains unresolved. No matter how advanced science becomes, death is still inevitable, and still terrifying. The vampire gives it a face. Fear that walks. The vampire does not roar or burn. It whispers. It waits. It returns. It is the nightmare that refuses to stay buried, the loved one who comes back wrong, the disease that spreads unseen, the hunger that never ends. The werewolf, the beast within. There is no monster more personal than the werewolf. Unlike dragons or vampires, the werewolf is not a creature apart from humanity. It is humanity, changed, fractured, and unleashed. By day, a neighbor. By night, a beast driven by hunger and instinct. The terror of the werewolf lies not in invasion, but in transformation. It asks a frightening question. What if the monster isn't out there, but inside us? Born from the wild edge of civilization. Werewolf legends arose in places where forests pressed tightly against human settlements. In medieval Europe, wolves were real threats. They hunted livestock, stalked travelers, and occasionally attacked isolated villages. During harsh winters or times of war, wolves grew bolder, drawn closer to human communities. To people already struggling to survive, the wolf became a symbol of nature's cruelty. But the werewolf went further. It suggested that humans could cross the boundary between civilization and savagery, that the difference between man and beast was thinner than anyone wanted to believe. Transformation and fear of loss of control. At the heart of the werewolf myth is transformation against one's will. Most legends describe ordinary people cursed to become wolves during a full moon. The change is painful, uncontrollable, and followed by shame. When morning comes, the human often remembers nothing, or remembers too much. This reflects a deep psychological fear, losing control over oneself. In societies governed by strict religious and social rules, self-restraint was essential. Rage, lust, and violence were sins to be suppressed. The werewolf became the embodiment of forbidden impulses breaking free. The moon, mysterious and cyclical, symbolized forces beyond human command. When it rose full in the sky, reason fell away. Werewolves and witch trials. During the height of witch hunts in Europe, werewolf accusations surged alongside accusations of sorcery. Those accused were often outsiders, hermits, the mentally ill, or people who lived on the fringes of society. In some trials, individuals confessed to becoming wolves, claiming they were compelled by demonic forces. These confessions were not always lies. Some may have suffered from clinical lycanthropy, a rare psychological condition in which a person believes they can transform into an animal. In a time without mental health understanding, belief became reality. The werewolf was not always hunted as a monster, it was sometimes punished as a sinner. Warriors, skins, and ancient rituals. Not all werewolf myths were born of fear. In earlier cultures, transformation into a wolf was a gift. Norse berserkers wore animal skins and believed they took on the strength and ferocity of wolves or bears in battle. Ancient Greek myths tell of Lycaon, a king transformed into a wolf as punishment, giving rise to the term lycanthropy. These stories suggest that becoming a beast was once associated with power rather than shame. As societies grew more structured, that power became threatening. Civilization required restraint. The wild had to be conquered, or locked away. The wolf as symbol. The wolf itself carries deep symbolism. It is intelligent, social, and fiercely territorial. It hunts in packs, yet can survive alone. It mirrors humanity in uncomfortable ways. To early communities, the wolf was competition. To myth, it became reflection. The werewolf represents humanity's animal ancestry, the instincts that civilization demands we suppress. Hunger, violence, dominance, desire. The transformation myth reassures us that these urges are not who we truly are. They are curses. External forces. Something that happens to us. The beast is blamed, so the man may be forgiven. Silver, wounds, and punishment. The idea that silver can kill a werewolf likely stems from its association with purity and the moon. Silver was believed to repel corruption and evil, making it a fitting weapon against a creature born of curse. A werewolf's vulnerability reinforces the moral lesson: the beast can be stopped. In many legends, a wound inflicted on the wolf appears on the human body the next day. This detail is crucial. It removes deniability. The monster and the man are one. There is no escape from responsibility. The modern werewolf. As science replaced superstition, belief in literal werewolves faded, but the myth evolved. Modern werewolves often struggle with identity. They fear hurting loved ones. They isolate themselves. They battle their own nature. In films and literature, the transformation becomes a metaphor for trauma, addiction, anger, or inherited violence. The monster is no longer external, it is psychological. The full moon still rises. The change still comes. But now the fight is internal. Why the werewolf endures? The werewolf survives because it tells an uncomfortable truth. Civilization is a thin layer. Under stress, hunger, fear, isolation, humans can become unrecognizable. History is filled with moments where ordinary people committed extraordinary violence. The werewolf gives that truth a shape. It allows us to confront the beast without admitting it belongs to us. The beast within. The werewolf does not lurk in distant caves or ancient tombs. It lives in villages. In families. In mirrors. It reminds us that humanity is not a permanent state, it is a choice made every day, often against instinct. The Kraken, terror of the deep. For most of human history, the ocean was a mystery without mercy. It stretched endlessly in every direction, swallowing ships, crews, and entire expeditions without explanation. Storms rose without warning. Depths remained unreachable. And when something massive moved beneath the waves, sailors did not think of animals. They thought of monsters. From this fear emerged the Kraken, a creature so vast it could drag ships into the abyss, leaving nothing but wreckage and rumors behind. The birth of a sea monster. The Kraken originates in Scandinavian folklore, particularly among Norwegian and Icelandic sailors. Described as a colossal beast with tentacles like living ropes, it was said to dwell in deep waters far from shore. Early accounts portrayed the Kraken not as a swift predator, but as a slow, immense presence. Sometimes sailors mistook it for an island, anchoring their ships upon its back, only to be pulled under when it submerged. These stories served a practical purpose. They warned sailors against dangerous waters, unpredictable currents, and unexplored seas. The Kraken was a living boundary marker: do not go here. When the sea turns against you. Sailing was among the most dangerous professions in history. Ships were fragile. Navigation was imprecise. Survival depended on weather, skill, and luck. When a vessel vanished, families demanded answers. The ocean provided none. The Kraken filled that silence. If a ship disappeared suddenly, dragged downward without debris or survivors, a monster made sense. Something large enough to pull wood and iron beneath the surface had to exist. Fear required form. Real creatures behind the legend. In the 18th century, scientists began recording sightings of giant squids, massive cephalopods capable of reaching extraordinary lengths. Though elusive, these creatures were real and terrifying. A single tentacle could reach over 30 feet. Suction cups lined with hooks left scars on whales. When a dead squid washed ashore, its size defied belief. To sailors unfamiliar with deep-sea life, a giant squid attacking a ship during a storm would appear supernatural. The Kraken was not imaginary, it was exaggerated. The ocean magnifies fear, and stories grew larger with every retelling. Maps, myths, and warnings. Medieval maps often depicted sea monsters at their edges. These illustrations were not decoration, they were warnings. Beyond this point lies danger. The Kraken occupied these margins, where knowledge ended and speculation began. It symbolized humanity's inability to control the sea. Unlike land monsters, the Kraken could not be hunted or slain. It lived where humans could not follow. That made it absolute. The psychology of the abyss. The Kraken embodies a specific fear: depth without visibility. On land, danger can usually be seen. In the ocean, threats come from below, silent, unseen, unstoppable. This taps into a primal anxiety. Humans evolved on land. The deep sea is alien, cold, dark, and pressurized. Even today, much of it remains unexplored. The Kraken is fear of what waits where light cannot reach. the monster that creates storms. Some legends claimed the Kraken caused whirlpools when it moved, sucking ships into spirals of water. In reality, powerful ocean currents and underwater topography can create sudden, deadly vortices. To those trapped in them, the experience would feel intentional, as though the sea itself had chosen to kill. The Kraken became the mind behind the madness. From folklore to science. As oceanography advanced, the Kraken faded from belief but not from imagination. Scientific discoveries replaced terror with curiosity. Yet the idea of a single, massive intelligence beneath the waves still resonates. Modern science fiction and film continue to revive the Kraken as a symbol of nature's dominance. No matter how advanced humanity becomes, the ocean remains resistant to mastery. We build ships, but the sea decides their fate. Unlike many monsters, the Kraken was never defeated. It was never slain by a hero or banished by faith. It simply retreated as knowledge expanded. That makes it uniquely powerful. It represents the humbling truth that some environments will always be beyond human control. Even now, sonar scans reveal unknown shapes in deep trenches. New species are discovered every year. The ocean keeps its secrets. And so does the Kraken. Terror of the deep. The Kraken is not a villain, it is a reminder. A reminder that the sea does not belong to us. That beneath calm surfaces lies crushing pressure and unimaginable life. When sailors once gazed into dark water and felt something watching back, they gave that fear a name. The Kraken. Medusa, the monster maid. Medusa is remembered as a monster, but she did not begin that way. Unlike dragons born of fire or beasts shaped by hunger, Medusa was once human. Her transformation was not the result of instinct or nature, but of punishment. Her story stands apart from other myths because it asks an uncomfortable question: who decides what a monster is? To understand Medusa is to understand how myths reflect power, blame, and fear. Before the serpents. In early Greek mythology, Medusa was a mortal woman of extraordinary beauty. She lived as a priestess in the temple of Athena, bound by vows of devotion and purity. Her beauty was said to draw attention wherever she went, a gift that quickly became a curse. When the sea god Poseidon desired Medusa, the encounter ended in violation within Athena's temple. The details vary between tellings, but the result does not. Medusa was punished. Athena, enraged by the desecration of her sacred space, transformed Medusa's hair into serpents and cursed her gaze to turn onlookers to stone. Poseidon faced no consequence. The monster was made, not born. A face that could not be seen. Medusa's power was absolute. One glance meant death. This ability isolated her completely. She was forced to live hidden away, cut off from human contact. Her appearance alone became lethal. In this way, Medusa's curse mirrors social exile. She was transformed into something others feared, then blamed for that fear. The snakes that crowned her head were symbols of danger and taboo, creatures associated with the earth, rebirth, and forbidden knowledge. Her gaze turning men to stone may symbolize the paralyzing power of trauma and shame, how being seen can feel fatal. Medusa did not hunt. She survived. The Gorgon myth. Medusa was one of 3 Gorgon sisters, but she was the only mortal among them. This distinction is crucial. Unlike her immortal siblings, Medusa could die. Her mortality made her vulnerable, not just to gods, but to heroes. When King Polydex demanded Medusa's head as a trophy, the task fell to Perseus. Armed by the gods with winged sandals, a mirrored shield, and a sword, Perseus approached Medusa while she slept. He never met her gaze. Using reflection to avoid her eyes, Perseus decapitated her. From her blood sprang Pegasus, the winged horse, proof that even in death, Medusa created beauty. The hero's trophy. Medusa's head did not lose its power after her death. Perseus wielded it as a weapon, turning enemies to stone. Eventually, Athena placed it upon her shield as a symbol of protection. This transformation, from curse to tool, reveals how power operates in myth. Medusa's fearsome ability was only acceptable once controlled by authority. What made her monstrous became acceptable when wielded by gods and heroes. Her story is not about evil defeated, but power reclaimed. Medusa a symbol. Over time, Medusa became a symbol layered with meaning. To ancient Greeks, she represented chaos subdued by order. To artists, she embodied dangerous beauty. To modern audiences, she has become an icon of injustice and resilience. Medusa reflects how societies treat victims, punishing them for crimes committed against them, then fearing the result. Her monstrous form becomes a warning: transgression will be met with transformation, regardless of guilt. The gaze and fear of the feminine. Medusa's power lies in her gaze. Throughout history, female autonomy has often been portrayed as dangerous. The idea that a woman's look could harm men reflects deep anxieties around sexuality, control, and agency. Medusa did not chase or attack. Others were destroyed by seeing her. This inversion of power made her terrifying. Her eyes stripped away dominance, freezing aggressors in place. In this sense, Medusa is not merely a monster, she is a reversal of power dynamics. Medusa has never faded because her story evolves. In each era, she reflects contemporary fears and values. Ancient audiences saw divine justice. Renaissance artists saw tragedy. Modern interpretations see a woman punished by an unjust system. She remains relevant because her transformation is emotional, not biological. She represents what happens when trauma is externalized, when suffering becomes identity. The monster made. Medusa's tragedy is not that she was slain. It is that she was never allowed to be human again. Her myth warns that monsters are often created by power, not nature. That fear can be manufactured. That punishment can outlive the crime. The Minotaur, lost in the labyrinth. At the heart of the Minotaur story is a prison. Not a cell with bars, but a maze so complex that escape was impossible. Those sent inside did not die because the Minotaur hunted them, they died because they were lost. The monster was only part of the horror. The labyrinth itself was the true trap. The Minotaur is one of mythology's most tragic figures. Born of power, punished for existence, and buried alive beneath stone and secrecy. A birth born of arrogance. The Minotaur's origin begins not with the beast, but with a king. Minos, ruler of Crete, was granted a divine bull by the god Poseidon as a sign of favor. In return, Minos was expected to sacrifice the bull. Instead, he kept it, placing pride above obedience. As punishment, Poseidon cursed Minos' wife, Pasiphae, with an unnatural desire for the bull. From this union came the Minotaur, a creature with the body of a man and the head of a bull. The Minotaur did not choose its birth. It was the consequence of human arrogance and divine retribution. The labyrinth as a living tomb. Ashamed of the creature, Minos ordered the master craftsman Daedalus to build a prison so intricate no one could escape it. Thus, the labyrinth was born. The Minotaur was not allowed to roam or be seen. It was hidden away, buried beneath layers of stone and confusion. The maze ensured isolation, both physical and psychological. To the Minotaur, the labyrinth was the entire world. The creature became monstrous not through malice, but through abandonment. Sacrifice and power. To maintain control and project dominance, Minos demanded a terrible tribute from Athens. 7 young men and 7 young women sent every 9 years into the labyrinth to be devoured. This ritual was not about feeding the Minotaur. It was about power. The Minotaur became a tool of terror, a living weapon used to enforce political obedience. The monster was blamed, but the cruelty belonged to the king. Man, beast, or both. The Minotaur is often depicted as savage and mindless. Yet its human body suggests something more complex. Was it capable of thought? Of loneliness? Of understanding? Greek myth leaves these questions unanswered, but the symbolism is clear. The Minotaur embodies humanity's fear of hybrid identity, of beings that defy classification. Neither fully human nor fully animal, the Minotaur represented a breakdown of order, a violation of natural boundaries. Civilization demanded it be hidden. Theseus and the hero's path. The cycle of sacrifice ended when Theseus volunteered to enter the labyrinth. With the help of Ariadne's thread, he navigated the maze, confronted the Minotaur, and killed it. Theseus emerged as a hero. But heroism in this story is complicated. The Minotaur was trapped, isolated, and fed unwilling victims. It did not ask for violence, it was shaped by it. The labyrinth ensured there could be no other outcome. The labyrinth as metaphor. The labyrinth represents systems that entrap. Once inside, movement becomes confusion. Choice disappears. Identity erodes. The Minotaur did not rule the labyrinth, it was imprisoned by it. In this sense, the monster is less the Minotaur and more the structure that confined it. Ancient audiences may have recognized this as a warning. Power creates monsters when it hides its mistakes instead of facing them. Cultural memory and bull worship. Some scholars believe the Minotaur myth reflects historical tensions between ancient Greek cultures and older Minoan civilizations that practiced bull worship. The bull symbolized strength, fertility, and divinity. By transforming the bull into a monster, Greek myth may have reasserted cultural dominance. The Minotaur becomes not just a creature, but a conquered belief system. The Minotaur persists because it is a monster of circumstance. It was born wrong, hidden away, and punished for existing. Its violence was inevitable, engineered by those who feared it. Modern interpretations often portray the Minotaur as tragic, a being longing for escape, understanding, or mercy. In this way, the myth evolves with society's growing awareness of responsibility and blame. Lost in the labyrinth. The Minotaur was never given a choice. Its story warns that when societies bury their mistakes, they do not disappear, they become dangerous. Monsters created in secrecy grow stronger in darkness. And somewhere beneath stone corridors and broken paths, the echo of hooves still sounds, reminding us that the greatest monsters are often the ones we refuse to face. The Yeti, ghost of the mountains. High above the forests and valleys, beyond the reach of roads and permanent settlements, the mountains keep their secrets. Winds erase footprints. Snow swallows sound. In places where survival itself feels uncertain, imagination fills the silence. It is here, among the peaks of the Himalayas, that the legend of the Yeti was born. Unlike monsters that terrorize villages or stalk the night, the Yeti does not seek humanity. It avoids it. This distance is part of its power. The Yeti is not a predator, it is a presence, glimpsed briefly and never fully understood. Born in isolation. The Yeti originates in the folklore of Himalayan cultures, including Tibetan, Nepalese, and Sherpa traditions. Known by many names, it was not always portrayed as a monster. In some stories, it was a guardian of the mountains, a wild being that punished disrespect and protected sacred land. Western explorers later transformed the Yeti into the abominable snowman, a name born from mistranslation and exaggeration. What was once a spiritual or neutral figure became a creature of fear. This shift reveals more about outsiders than about the Yeti itself. Footprints in the snow. The most enduring image of the Yeti is its footprints, massive, human-like impressions appearing in snowfields where no human should be. Throughout the 20th century, climbers and expeditions reported seeing these tracks. Photographs circulated. Stories spread. Each account added weight to the legend. Yet snow deceives. Melting and refreezing can distort animal tracks, enlarging them beyond recognition. Bears, standing on hind legs, leave prints eerily similar to human footprints. But in thin air, exhaustion alters perception. The mountains play tricks on the mind. The psychology of extreme environments. High-altitude environments are brutal. Low oxygen impairs judgment. Isolation heightens anxiety. Endless white landscapes disorient even experienced climbers. In such conditions, the brain seeks meaning. Shadows move. Shapes appear. A distant figure becomes something else entirely. The Yeti thrives in these psychological gaps. It is not just a creature of myth, it is a response to human vulnerability. Bears, bones, and misidentification. Scientific investigations into Yeti sightings often point to Himalayan brown bears or Tibetan blue bears. These animals are large, rare, and capable of walking upright for short distances. Hair samples once claimed to be Yeti remains were later identified as bear, horse, or other known animals. Yet these explanations have not erased belief. The Yeti persists because it occupies places science rarely visits. The sacred wild. In local traditions, the Yeti was not hunted. It was respected. Some monasteries claim to possess Yeti relics, scalps, bones, or hands, kept not as proof, but as sacred objects. The Yeti represented the untamed world, a reminder that not everything belonged to humanity. In this sense, the Yeti was not a failure of understanding, it was a boundary marker. Do not go further. Western obsession and the hunt for proof. As exploration increased, so did attempts to capture the Yeti, on film, in photographs, or even alive. Expeditions sought fame and validation, not harmony. Each failure only deepened the mystery. The Yeti became a symbol of the unknown surviving in a mapped world. The Yeti remains because remote places still exist. Unlike dragons or vampires, the Yeti does not require ancient belief. It thrives on uncertainty. As long as there are places humans cannot fully reach, something might live there. The Yeti reassures us that the world is still larger than our knowledge. Ghost of the mountains. The Yeti does not roar. It does not attack. It watches. It stands at the edge of visibility, half seen, half imagined, an echo of wilderness itself. In a world increasingly defined and controlled, the Yeti remains undefined. The Banshee, voice of death. The Banshee does neither. She does not strike, curse, or attack. She appears only to announce what cannot be stopped. Her power lies not in violence, but in inevitability. In Irish folklore, the Banshee is not a bringer of death, she is its voice. A cry in the night. The word Banshee comes from the Irish Binside, meaning woman of the fairy mound. She belongs to the otherworld, a realm that exists alongside the human one, thinly separated by mist, darkness, and belief. Her presence is marked by sound, a piercing wail, a keening cry that drifts through the night air. Those who hear it know that someone in the household will soon die. Not might die. Will. The terror of the Banshee lies in certainty. Death as a companion, not an enemy. Unlike many deathly figures, the Banshee is not malicious. She does not cause death, she announces it. In some stories, she weeps rather than screams, mourning the soul she has come to escort. This reflects Ireland's cultural relationship with death. Traditional Irish wakes involved loud, emotional grieving, keening, that honored the dead openly. The Banshee may be a supernatural echo of this ritual, giving grief a form before death even arrives. She is sorrow made audible. Bound to bloodlines. Many legends claim that a Banshee is attached to specific families, particularly old Irish clans. She appears only for them, generation after generation. This connection transforms the Banshee from a random omen into a familial guardian. She is not a stranger, but a watcher, one who remembers. In this sense, the Banshee is not haunting families. She belongs to them. Shifting forms, singular purpose. Descriptions of the Banshee vary widely. She may appear as a young woman with flowing hair, a pale crone cloaked in grey, or even a washerwoman cleaning blood-stained clothes by a river. Her appearance adapts, but her purpose does not. She is always tied to death, and always too late to prevent it. This consistency reinforces the myth's core message: death cannot be escaped, only acknowledged. The psychology of anticipated loss. Hearing the Banshee means living with knowledge of what is coming. This anticipation is its own torment. Modern psychology recognizes this as anticipatory grief, the pain experienced before a loss occurs. The Banshee externalizes this emotional state, transforming internal dread into a supernatural signal. The myth teaches acceptance rather than resistance. There is no monster to fight. Misunderstood as evil. As folklore spread beyond Ireland, the Banshee was often mischaracterized as a malicious spirit. Screams were equated with threat. Death with punishment. But within Irish tradition, she is closer to a mourner than a demon. She does not rejoice. She laments. This distinction is vital. The Banshee reflects a culture that acknowledged death as part of life, not as a failure or curse. Nature's voice. Some believe the Banshee myth may have been inspired by natural sounds, wind howling through valleys, fox cries, or birds calling at night. In rural areas, these sounds could be terrifying, especially when paired with sudden illness or death. Meaning followed sound. But once given a name and story, the Banshee became more than explanation, she became comfort. A sign that death was witnessed, not ignored. The Banshee survives because death remains unknowable. Even in a modern world of hospitals and science, death often arrives without warning. The desire for a sign, for preparation, endures. The Banshee offers what humanity still seeks, meaning in loss. She reminds us that death is not silent. It is mourned. Voice of death. The Banshee does not stalk or strike. She cries. Her wail is grief before it happens, a voice for emotions too heavy to bear alone. She stands at the boundary between worlds, honoring those about to cross. The Chimera, chaos combined. Some monsters terrify because they are powerful. Others because they are familiar. The Chimera is frightening for a different reason: it should not exist at all. It is a fusion of contradictions. A lion's body, a goat's head rising from its back, and a serpent for a tail. Each part is recognizable. Together, they are wrong. The Chimera is not simply a beast, it is chaos made flesh. Born of monsters. In Greek mythology, the Chimera was the offspring of two other legendary creatures, Typhon, a storm giant embodying destruction, and Echidna, the mother of monsters. From this lineage came beings that defied nature itself. The Chimera breathed fire, ravaged the countryside of Lycia, and resisted all attempts at conventional defeat. Its very existence challenged the natural order. In a world where harmony was prized, the Chimera represented breakdown. Fear of the unnatural. Ancient societies relied on categorization to make sense of the world. Animals had roles. Humans had roles. Nature followed patterns. The Chimera violated all of it. By blending predator, livestock, and venomous reptile, the creature became an embodiment of disorder. It symbolized fear of mutation, contamination, and blurred boundaries. What happens when nature forgets its rules? The Chimera was the answer. Fire as corruption. Like dragons, the Chimera breathed fire, but its flame carried different meaning. Dragons often guarded treasure or knowledge. The Chimera destroyed indiscriminately. Fire in this context symbolized corruption, spreading across land meant to sustain life. Crops failed. Livestock perished. Civilization retreated. The Chimera was not conquerable through strength alone, it required ingenuity. Bellerophon and the heroic solution. The Chimera was eventually slain by the hero Bellerophon, who rode the winged horse Pegasus. Unable to approach safely, Bellerophon attacked from above, using a spear tipped with lead. When the Chimera breathed fire, the lead melted and flowed into its throat, suffocating it. This victory was not about brute force. It was about understanding the monster's nature. The story reinforces a critical mythological lesson: chaos cannot be confronted head-on. It must be outsmarted. Hybrid monsters across cultures. The Chimera is not unique. Hybrid monsters appear across civilizations: sphinxes, manticores, griffins. These creatures often guard sacred spaces or punish transgression. Hybridity itself was seen as dangerous, a blending of categories that threatens social and natural order. Such creatures reflect anxiety around change. When traditions erode and boundaries blur, the mind imagines monsters that embody uncertainty. Psychological interpretation. On a psychological level, the Chimera represents fragmented identity. It is many things at once, unified only by destruction. Each part pulls in a different direction. There is no harmony, only conflict. This mirrors internal chaos, emotions, impulses, and fears clashing without resolution. The Chimera externalizes what happens when balance is lost. The Chimera as cultural warning. Greek myths often functioned as moral frameworks. The Chimera warned against excess and hubris, not just in individuals, but in societies. Unchecked power creates instability. Ignored imbalance grows monstrous. The Chimera's destruction was necessary not because it was evil, but because it disrupted order. The word Chimera still exists in modern language, meaning an impossible or illusory idea. This linguistic survival reveals how deeply the concept resonates. We still fear things that don't fit categories. We still struggle with chaos, political, emotional, environmental. The Chimera evolves alongside those fears. Chaos combined. The Chimera was not subtle. It did not hide. It ravaged openly, forcing confrontation. The Wendigo, hunger without end. There are monsters born of fire, and monsters born of darkness. The Wendigo is born of hunger. Not the fleeting hunger of an empty stomach, but the desperate, consuming hunger that strips away morality, identity, and humanity itself. In the frozen forests of North America, where winter could mean death and isolation drove people to madness, the Wendigo emerged as a warning carved into stone. It is not a creature that attacks without reason. It is a consequence. Origins in the cold. The Wendigo comes from the folklore of Algonquian-speaking indigenous peoples, including the Cree, Ojibwe, and Innu. These cultures lived in regions where winter was long, brutal, and unforgiving. Food scarcity was a constant threat. In such conditions, survival sometimes demanded unthinkable choices. Cannibalism, while taboo, was a grim reality in extreme circumstances. The Wendigo myth arose to draw an unbreakable moral line. To consume another human was to lose one's soul. Transformation through transgression. The Wendigo was not born, it was made. Legends describe humans who became Wendigos after committing acts of cannibalism, greed, or spiritual corruption. Once transformed, the creature grew taller, thinner, and more monstrous the more it consumed. Yet it was never satisfied. Its hunger increased endlessly, stretching its body into a gaunt, skeletal form. This physical exaggeration reflects a powerful lesson: greed only creates more emptiness. The Wendigo is punishment that continues forever. Appearance and symbolism. Descriptions of the Wendigo vary, but common traits remain: emaciated limbs, sunken eyes, exposed bones, and sometimes antlers or horns. Its body appears starved despite constant feeding. This contradiction is central to the myth. The Wendigo consumes endlessly but is never full. It represents desire without limit, appetite without conscience. In a survival-based culture, this was the ultimate horror. The Wendigo as social safeguard. The Wendigo myth functioned as more than fear, it was protection. By framing cannibalism as a transformation into something monstrous, the story reinforced communal bonds and moral behavior. Survival was collective, not individual. The Wendigo warned against isolation. Those who hoarded food or abandoned others risked spiritual death long before physical death. Wendigo psychosis. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, Western observers recorded cases of what they called Wendigo psychosis, individuals who believed they were becoming Wendigos or felt compelled to eat human flesh. Modern scholars debate the classification, suggesting cultural misunderstanding or misdiagnosis. However, the phenomenon highlights the psychological toll of starvation and isolation. The myth gave language to extreme mental distress, misrepresentation and respect. It is important to note that modern portrayals often distort the Wendigo, turning it into a generic horror creature. In its original context, the Wendigo is not entertainment. It is a moral lesson, a cultural safeguard, and a spiritual warning. Respecting its origins means understanding that it was never meant to frighten outsiders, it was meant to protect communities. The Wendigo and modern greed. In contemporary interpretations, the Wendigo has evolved into a metaphor for unchecked consumption, corporate greed, environmental destruction, addiction, and exploitation. The hunger without end now reflects societies that consume without regard for consequence. The myth adapts because the warning still applies. The Wendigo survives because hunger still exists. Not just hunger for food, but hunger for power, wealth, and dominance. It reminds us that when survival becomes selfish, humanity is lost. Unlike many monsters, the Wendigo cannot be reasoned with or redeemed. Once the line is crossed, the transformation is permanent. Hunger without end. The Wendigo does not roar like a dragon or whisper like a vampire. Monsters never truly disappear, they change shape. As we've seen, these legendary creatures were born from fear, belief, and the need to understand a dangerous world. Yet even today, we still tell their stories, because they remind us of something timeless: the unknown is never far away. If these myths fascinated you, imagine how many legends are still waiting to be uncovered. Thank you for watching Monsters and Myths Explained, 10 Legendary Creatures. Your curiosity keeps these stories alive. If you enjoyed this journey, consider liking, subscribing, and sharing. Which legend should we explore next?